A degree or so higher compared to yesterday, a little milder. However, through the evening, much of the UK looking fine for bonfire night, decent weather for fireworks displays, away from western Scotland where the rain tends to become more persistent, especially after midnight. The wind picks up after midnight as well. And for most, it's a much milder night compared to recent nights, with temperatures staying well above freezing. That breeze with us as we start off Saturday, and it's going to turn increasingly wet for northern and western Scotland. That rain sinking into Northern Ireland, then northern England, much of Wales by lunchtime. It does sink south fairly quickly, so that will mitigate against any kind of impacts from the rainfall, but it will be a wet and windy day in many places, and the wind pushing blustery showers into Scotland and Northern Ireland by the end of Saturday. But really the rain doesn't reach East Anglia in the southeast until the evening, and even as it does, it's a weak feature, so just a few spots of rain and drizzle as it sinks away into the continent. Then it turns very windy overnight in northern Scotland, risk of big waves and coastal impacts as well. Sunday is a windy but drier day.
Join me, Alex Phillips, for the afternoon agenda on GB News, Monday to Thursday from 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. We don't lecture to you or try to tell you what to think. We do a deep delve into a topic with views from across the range of debate, therefore leaving you, the viewer, to make up your own mind. Join me, Alex Phillips, for the afternoon agenda on GB News, 4 till 6, Monday to Thursday. You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing, your afternoon fix of all the latest political news, debate and analysis. I'm Arlene Foster, and here's what's coming up over this next hour. First up today, I'll speak to Stanley Johnson, father of the Prime Minister, and about his environmental work, and we'll bring you all the latest from Glasgow. Also today, the migrant crisis continues, even as the weather gets cold. More than 20,000 have crossed this year, and one is feared drown overnight. We've got that tragic story. And a strong majority of people in Northern Ireland back staying in the United Kingdom, according to the latest polling. We'll bring you a first look at that research and talk to polling experts and the DUP. So give me your political briefing. Send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews.
I'm Rhiannon Jones. This is your news at 3:01. The Education Secretary Nadeem Zahawi has admitted the government made a mistake when it combined a vote on disciplinary procedures with a Tory MP's suspension. Owen Paterson faced a 30-day ban for breaching lobbying rules, but a Conservative vote blocked the recommendation before a U-turn was made. He has now officially resigned. The former cabinet minister has tweeted to say he's stepping aside from consultancy work to focus on his family and suicide prevention. Mr. Zahawi says the government can't be complacent in the face of perceptions of sleaze.
Conflating that with a specific case of Owen Paterson was a mistake. I think to reflect within 24 hours and by the morning have the leader of the House, and I take collective responsibility for this, by the way, to come forward and say, look, we made a mistake to conflate the two, the really important one to get right, and we need cross-party negotiation on this, and I urge all my fellow parliamentarians from whichever party to shed their politics. Let's not play tit for tat. Let's get this right for generations and actually for your viewers, for the country, to have confidence in the system of scrutiny of MPs.
Yorkshire County Cricket Club has announced the appointment of Lord Patel as its new chairman and director. The club is vowing to do whatever it takes to regain trust after former player Azim Rafiq accused it of institutional racism. The former chairman, Roger Hutton, quit earlier today in the wake of the allegations. 2 other board members have also resigned. England and Wales Cricket Board CEO Tom Harrison confirmed the incident is being taken very seriously.
Strong action is being taken in response to this, where trust has been breached, where there is a fault line, where there are problems, and the message we're sending out is we are taking action and we will listen.
The European Commission Vice President says he is disappointed by the UK's efforts to reach an agreement on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Maros Sefcovic announced EU proposals that would create an express lane for goods through simplified certification and reduced checks. But he claims after a third round of talks with Britain's Brexit Minister Lord Frost, they are no closer to an agreement. The 2 men will meet for continued talks in London next week. Sefcovic says all efforts should be focused on reaching a solution as soon as possible.
We have seen no move at all from the UK side. I find this disappointing, and once again I urge the UK government to engage with us sincerely. Our aim should be to establish stability and predictability for Northern Ireland. We hear a lot about Article 16 at the moment. Let there be no doubt that triggering Article 16 to seek the renegotiation of the protocol would have serious consequences.
A record-breaking 853 migrants crossed the English Channel on Wednesday. The Home Office confirmed the number, which tops the previous daily record of 828 set in August. Earlier, French authorities said 2 migrants died this week while attempting the journey. More than 21,000 migrants have now made the crossing to the UK this year, double the total for 2020. A 5th teenager has been found guilty of killing 15-year-old Keon Lincoln, who was shot and stabbed outside his home in Birmingham in January. Kieran Donaldson has been convicted, having been accused of supplying weapons for the attack. Pfizer has announced that its antiviral pill for COVID-19 cuts hospital admission rates and deaths by 89%. The preliminary results are based on a study of 775 adults. It follows yesterday's announcement that molnupiravir had become the first pill to be approved for use in the UK. British Airways parent company IAG has warned it's likely to make a £2.5 billion loss this year. BA says passenger numbers are starting to improve but remain well below pre-pandemic levels. The airline says the reopening of transatlantic travel will help the company return to profit. It plans to fly about 60% of its pre-pandemic capacity in the current quarter. Young activists are marching through the centre of Glasgow, demanding action from leaders and politicians as COP26 climate talks continue. The protest has been organised by the school strike movement, Fridays for Future. Environmental campaigner Greta Thunberg and other global youth activists will speak to the crowds at the end of the march. Now, icebergs don't usually make it as far south as Glasgow, but one has arrived at COP26. The 4-ton block of ice has been shipped in from Greenland by scientific activist group Arctic Base Camp as a visible reminder of the scale of the climate crisis. 1,000 litres of glacial meltwater collected from the fjords are also being given out in bottles to delegates. I'll be back with the latest headlines in half an hour. Now let's return to the briefing with Arlene Foster.
Welcome to the show. This week has seen the bulk of the COP26 climate conference in Glasgow. In fact, you can't seem to escape the issues in the news, as we heard. So today at the conference, the theme is children and youth empowerment. And on this theme, the government has announced that those as young as 5 will be taught about climate change for the first time under changes being made to the curriculum. Education Secretary Nadhim Zahawi believes telling children that humans harm the planet is one of the key weapons in the fight against climate change. A new model science curriculum, he said, will encourage teachers to educate children about their impact on the natural world. But could the new syllabus stray into teaching children activism rather than knowledge? And are children being taught to be fearful rather than believe in human progress? So as I've said, Friday is Youth and Empowerment Day at COP26, and I'm very delighted to say that Stanley Johnson, the Prime Minister's father and lifelong environmentalist, is with me now. So Stanley, what have you made of what's been going on in Glasgow? Are you pleased with the progress, or how do you think things have went?
Well, I'm a long way from representing youth.
I know, but we'll come on to talk about that in a second.
No. Well, I am pleased. I'm very pleased, actually. I am particularly pleased at some of the big achievements which have already been in the bag. I'm thinking, for example, of the Global Leaders Declaration on Forests.
Deforestation, absolutely, yeah.
Forests and land use. In my long career as an environmentalist, I worked quite hard on the forest issue. I remember resigning once from the EU to go and work with FAO to try and get a forest convention at the Rio meeting way back in 1992. We didn't succeed in that. About 15 years ago, there was a declaration in New York. But this one is worth having. I mean, looking at it now, there are 130 countries signed up to it. And these represent 90% of the world's forests. And they have collectively agreed to halt and reverse. So that's a big win. Methane, they've got that in the bag up to a point with a 30% reduction promise.
Yeah.
On the key thing of will we get back on track and hit the 1.5 degree, that is pretty much in doubt, I would say.
Yeah.
And what we will do, perhaps, is nudge closer to the 2.
Yeah.
And I think we can assume that with the huge progress which is going to be made on renewables, in the end, quite soon, we'll get closer to the 1.5.
I mean, I mentioned the fact that the Education Secretary has announced this change to the curriculum. I presume you were very pleased about that because it's teaching young people about the environment, the world in which they live, biodiversity at quite an early age.
You're so right. I mean, of course, I'm not particularly keen on the government saying this, that, or the other has to be taught in school. I mean,
but it's raising the issue.
I spent most of my time, doing Latin and Greek at school. Like I said, I wish someone had told me I had to do science. That would have been good. But yes, of course it's right. There's some practical ways of doing this too, and that is to make sure they get out into the open air. I mean, you come from Northern Ireland. Well, getting out into the open air and your wonderful landscape, your wonderful nature is something I guess most of the children manage to do quite a lot. We need to work on that. Learning by example.
I just don't think, I mean, for me, it's not just about government. It is about those organisations like Scouts and Guides and people like that who, I was a Girl Guide for many years and a leader in it. And it's about using those organisations to get messages across about biodiversity and about planting more trees. And I presume that you would agree with that, Stanley.
I do, absolutely. I think I was a cub.
People are now thinking of me in Girl Guide uniform and you as a cub. But anyway, let us move on from that. I think it is about a partnership approach. And is that the way in which COP26 has been moving this week? It is about that partnership approach?
Look, I don't want to have sort of unthinking optimism here, but we're halfway through. I'm here actually as, amongst other things, as the international ambassador for the Conservative Environment Network. And I would say that, I don't want to get too political here, that there's been a big push, I think, in the Conservative Party to put environment, biodiversity, climate change at the top of the agenda. We came out earlier this year, if you remember, with last year, with a statement which said our two international priorities, climate change and biodiversity.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we're going to get there.
And people don't really talk about biodiversity. Everybody now, I think, has this conversation about climate change, but there isn't much conversation about biodiversity.
Well, that really has to change, because if you're going to do climate change,
you can't do it without biodiversity.
At least 30%. Elizabeth Morema, who, by the way, is a very fine executive secretary of something called the Convention for Biological Diversity, made it absolutely clear the other day you can't reach the targets, the Glasgow targets, unless at least 30% of this is involved with what you call nature-based solutions, planting trees, and planting trees in the proper way. I mean, and using them in the proper way. I'm not keen, for example, on this mass biomass for power plants and stuff like that.
So we're going to go now to Glasgow and get the latest from our Tom Harwood, who is there, our political correspondent. And Tom's been living COP26 for this past week. Tom, how are things going up there today? I understand you're on the protest today.
That's right. I started off today inside COP26, speaking to people who are sort of running the show, making the decisions, and now we're outside the secure zone. We're on where there was a protest that was advertised as if it would be 100,000 people. I have to say, standing here now in chilly George Square in Glasgow, it doesn't look like there's 100,000 people here. We're sort of standing not that far from the stage, and as you can see, it's sort of smatterings of people around. It really thins out, not that deep into the crowd. Now, this is of course part of the school strikes movement. Children across Scotland have been encouraged to skip school today to come on this protest. Now, I'm sure many children will have skipped school. How many of them have turned up to this protest? That's an entirely different question. But it is curious to see people here, a stage set up, activists coalescing to protest COP. And of course, COP is that huge environmental summit where big decisions are being made. Huge moves on methane, on coal, on trees, even on cash for developing countries. And yet people still feel like it's not quite enough. The Greta Thunbergs of this world, and of course Greta Thunberg was leading one of these marches to this square this afternoon. They are just not happy. I start to think, at what point will they ever be content? Will enough ever be enough in terms of global agreements to combat climate change?
Thanks for that, Tom. It's really good to hear from you up there in Glasgow. And Stanley, there's a lot going on there today, but maybe not as many as people expected to come together. I mean, how do you feel about young people skipping school to do all of this today?
I think I'd be very much in favour of that. As far as I'm concerned, Greta Thunberg, I think, has been an example, not just to her generation, but to my generation too. Realistically, how did this happen? This happened because we've had 150 years of the rich nations of the world. I know I must sound like an idealist now, but the rich nations of the world, they got richer and they got richer. And yes, they've enjoyed that wealth. But actually, the people are now paying the price and having to adapt to the climate change problem, which we probably have caused with our output over the last 150 years. They don't have the resources. So one of the things these people are marching for is actually for us to do a bit of putting our money on the table to help those people, particularly the 2/3 of the world, which still lives on very small income, those people adapt to the problem we have largely caused. I know, I mean, I think the young people get this.
I mean, I take your point about that, and I've heard Lord Debham make the same point about the Industrial Revolution and what have you. Yeah. But I mean, presumably the Industrial Revolution was a good thing at the same time, wasn't it?
I don't know about presumably that.
I mean, we're not going to go back to the Luddites and say we're against all of that. But I mean, I think
finally it was a good thing.
Yeah.
I can remember way back in 1972 going to the first World Environment Conference in Stockholm. Oddly enough, that's where Greta comes from. I can visualise the wonderful buildings late at night, sun never sets. And what do? We march behind the leader of the conference, Maurice Strong, with a huge inflatable whale. That's what we were fighting for then, to stop whaling and various other things. We didn't talk much about climate change, but that has come up over 30 years. And so we have realised that, unbeknownst to us, we did huge damage to the environment. And this is a moment where we can put it right. And I don't think I quite agree with the sort of sceptical note in your correspondence voice, Tom
well,
Watson.
We do like debates, Stanley.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, we'll have to have a little bit of debate when you come on.
A little bit sceptical. Will it ever be enough, he asked.
Yeah.
Well, it will be enough if we can get the world back on track, nearer 1.5, and we keep it there. That's the crucial thing.
I think it's important that we also acknowledge, though, that the Industrial Revolution was a good thing, but we have to acknowledge what has happened since then and then try to resource where there are difficulties in the developing world. I think that's where we can agree on that issue. But I just wanted to ask you, this has been a difficult week for the Conservative Party. And
no, I missed that.
Oh, you missed that. Well, I don't think our viewers will have missed that. And the Education Secretary has said it was a mistake to conflate the two issues of Owen Paterson's investigation and changing the rules. I presume you would agree with that, Stan.
I love the use of that word conflate. It just takes me back to my days when I was doing Greek and Latin. It means to blow things together.
Yeah.
And I think he was right. I think it was Jacob Rees-Mogg who actually first used the word conflate in Parliament.
No surprise there, then.
No surprise.
Given that.
And, yeah, I think his assessment was good. Probably it was a mistake to conflate this. That said, there are good men and there are bad men. And I would, on the whole, put Owen Paterson on the side of the good.
I would agree with that, I have to say. So, Stanley, thank you so much for coming in today. And
a great pleasure to me.
And thank you.
Very nice to see you.
Thank you very much. So after the break, I'm speaking to the people at the University of Buckingham who are trying to save the environment with technology rather than protest. Before that, let's take a look at the weather.
Hello again. A lot more cloud across the UK today compared to yesterday, but actually many places still dry and bright. It is a little milder compared to recent days. It will turn even milder again this weekend, but also windier as this low approaches. Ahead of the low, this warm front bringing additional cloud cover across the UK. But generally, well, most places are dry and bright. And as we end the day, decent enough weather for bonfire night with clear spells in the east, cloud elsewhere. Any rain confined to northwestern hills and coasts. But it will turn increasingly wet for western Scotland in particular by the end of the night. With thicker cloud and a bit more of a breeze overnight, temperatures will hold up. A frost-free night for all of us. But a cloudy start to the day, and in northern and western Scotland, an increasingly wet start to the day. That wet and increasingly windy weather sweeps its way across the rest of Scotland, Northern Ireland, into northern England by lunchtime, as well as Wales. Coastal gales accompanying the rain, and the rain heavy over western hills. But it's replaced by sunshine and showers in Scotland and Northern Ireland, and ahead of it, some dry weather and also a mild day for all of us, 12 to 14 Celsius. The rain eases as it pushes south across southern parts of the UK on Saturday evening, clears away by midnight, and then clear spells, but increasingly windy across the UK, particularly in the north, and for northern Scotland, risk of gales or severe gales combined with high seas could be some significant coastal impacts. Showery rain continues for Scotland, but elsewhere it dries up through the night with some clear spells or some sunshine as we begin Sunday. Still, though, a windy day to come, especially over the higher ground of northern England and Scotland, and to the east of higher ground. Could be some transport disruption because of those gusty winds. But for most, Sunday's looking drier than Saturday with some brightness, and it stays changeable next week.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they are issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News home and security editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Welcome back. Before we speak to innovators at the University of Buckingham, let's go quickly back to Glasgow. And our Scotland reporter, Davy Donaldson, has been following the Greta Thunberg protests all day. Davy, what's the atmosphere like in Glasgow at the minute?
Yeah, here in George Square in Glasgow city centre, the atmosphere is pretty good. We've had a whole host of speakers here, people from Argentina, people from Papua New Guinea, people from Brazil, so on and so forth, getting across their point about what's happening in their country. Of course, earlier today, the protest left Kelvin Grove Park in Glasgow's West End, and it did take a while to get going, there's no doubt about that, but eventually it did get going, rather slowly to begin with, but certainly once it started to pick up pace a little bit, then people managed to get through the streets, obviously under the escort of the police. But yeah, that did take a while to get going. The GMB joined in, other people joined in as well on the back of it. Greta Thunberg, of course, in there as well. She's about to come on here any moment. I would suggest in the next half hour we might hear from Greta Thunberg. But yeah, it's been a very peaceful protest. I've not seen any trouble that I've been aware of so far. It's certainly a pretty quiet crowd, and as I say, we've got speakers from all across the globe. The only thing you would say is, now that the leaders have left the conference, the COP26 conference, how much of a message has got across, and how much of a point is there having these continual protests when nobody, in terms of the world leaders, is actually here?
Davy, tell me, have any roads been blocked in Glasgow today? Because, of course, we're well aware that Insulate Britain and people like that like to block roads, and I'm just wondering if any of the young people taken up that inspiration, if you like?
No, not as far as I'm aware today. Obviously, there was roads closed off to traffic to allow the protesters to come through from the city's West End into town. So obviously that was all blocked off. But in terms of actually blocking it, I think really the goal today for the protesters was to come here to George Square and try very much to get their message across.
OK, Davy, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. So, away from Glasgow, what are educational institutions doing to save the environment? Not all young people have been skipping school to join protests with Greta Thunberg, or dare I say, blocking roads. My next guest organised an event at the University of Buckingham last night focused on how students can make a real difference with new technology and innovation. And joining me now is Greg Smith, who's the MP for Buckingham, and Aid Ozibodun, a student at the university, and I hope I got the pronunciation right. Aid, it's good to see you both. And so, Greg, what was your message to your assembled gathering last night? I understand it was organised so that you could be positive about the challenges that lie ahead.
Absolutely. My message was that with the environmental challenges we face, the important test has to be not to stop us doing the things we want to do, like taking a flight to go on holiday, driving our cars, heating our homes. The answer can't be to just stop doing those things. It's got to be embracing technology so that we can continue to do them. And I focused my remarks last night on the development by the former Formula One engineering legend Paddy Lowe, along with a professor from Imperial College, to create synthetic petroleum that works in all existing internal combustion engines, on aircraft, on ships, and agricultural machinery. Because as technology advances and as our great scientists and innovators come up with new solutions, we can actually carry on living our lives the way we want to, rather than pressing the big button that says, stop the world, I want to get off.
So, just so I understand it, and for our viewers as well, and it's good to see Abby joining us now as well, Greg, if you could tell us, what's the idea behind synthetic fuels and how will they actually work to mitigate against climate change?
So they're entirely man-made, so that when they burn, no nasties come out the back. The byproduct is predominantly water. It is an infant technology, so it is very energy intensive to create the fuel in the first place at the moment, but infant technologies become polished, they become better, and they'll become less energy intensive. Certainly Zero Petroleum, which is the company run by Paddy Lowe, uses entirely renewable sources for their power. And for just £40 billion, i.e. the cost of track and trace, or a third of the cost of HS2, could actually create a scaled plant that would produce enough synthetic petroleum to power essentially the state's use of petroleum, be it through the RAF, be it through public transport, etc. This is a way of saying we don't need to scrap the internal combustion engine. We can actually put something through it that is not going to put out the nasties that fossil-fueled power currently does.
So, Adi, you were one of the organisers last night of the event. What was the inspiration, if you like, behind organising the event, and what did you hope to achieve by it?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me. So, what inspired it is there is a discussion to be had, and we need information. And I think the MP just said about synthetic fuel and how that can aid or improve or reduce emissions that affect the climate. But you notice that a lot of discussions have been had on EVs as electric vehicles, but nobody's talking about this synthetic fuel. So why aren't we talking about having a discussion about the different alternatives and how we can use technology to solve the problems we're currently facing? It was great to have speakers. I think there was also the Dean of the Faculty of Law, Computer and Science, and he spoke clearly on how AI, artificial intelligence, can help reduce climate emissions. There is so much to talk about, and it's important that we have that information. The panel was there to inform people, and I think they did a very great job yesterday.
And Adi, I mean, sometimes when people hear about climate change, they're being told not to do something or to cut back on something. I think what last night was about trying to find solutions and using new technology and artificial intelligence. Is that what you were hoping to get across last night, the positiveness of dealing with climate change?
And I think you're totally right. That's the aim. And if you notice, people tend to cooperate better when they're encouraged on the positives and not the negatives. And what we're trying to do, what we're hoping to do, is to see how technology, which is a fundamental part of our lives, and it has played a fundamental role even through the recent pandemic as well, how that can help us solve the climate issues that we currently have. And I'm hoping, based on what we've had, the discussion we had yesterday, a lot has been taken from that, and I'm sure we'll still have many more sessions on it going forward.
And one of the things that struck me today when the announcement came through about changes to the curriculum were made by the Education Secretary today, which I presume you welcome. Of course, kids have to be in school to get those lessons. And do you think that it's right that children are out of school when they could actually be in school learning about green technology, artificial intelligence, synthetic fuels? Is it not the way forward to actually engage with this subject in a more positive way?
It's a good question you asked there. I would never say no to protest, because I have protested in my past, and I will join a protest if I'm really passionate about it. But it's important we also know that our children, our kids, need to be informed, and they can only be informed in the classroom. So if we take them out of the classes, then we're actually doing more harm than good. So I would not encourage kids to go out, but I will join a protest if I'm really passionate about it. So
one can also always protest after school or before school is not the point I'm making as well. So, Greg, tell me, it has been a pretty tough week for the Conservative Party. I know you're on to talk about environmental issues, but would you agree with your Education Secretary when he says there was a mistake made in relation to what happened this week?
Yeah, it has been a really tough week, and I think that the mistake that was made was to try and put a reform to the standard system together with the specific case of Owen Paterson. And clearly he's now resigned as an MP. He's said that he's going to leave what he described as the cruel world of politics behind, but carry on with public service. What I hope can come from this week is to put in a real, genuine appeals process into the standard system in Parliament, because it doesn't seem right nor fair to me that in any other walk of life, in an employment tribunal or a court of law or whatever it might be, everybody else has that right of appeal. Yeah. Owen made a very strong case for why he felt an appeal was necessary. It may not have gone in his favour. But unfortunately, trying to conflate the two probably was an error. But we do need to have a look at that standard system to see if we can lock in an appeals process.
Well, thank you both very much for joining us today. And before we go to the break, there was another issue that caused me some alarm this morning in the Northern Ireland papers, and I wanted to draw it to your attention. This was a photo chosen by the Belfast Newsletter, which they put below their headline this morning. It's taken from the very first television interview I ever gave at the age of 17, seeing as we're talking about youth empowerment today. So today I'm asking you, the viewer, to send in some of your favourite political haircuts over the years. Hopefully we'll show a few at the end of the show. In my defence, it was the late 1980s. After the break, we'll be bringing you the latest from the Channel, where illegal crossings have hit 20,000 and at least one migrant is feared dead from drowning.
I'm Rhiannon Jones. Here are the latest headlines. The Education Secretary, Nadeem Zahawi, has admitted the government made a mistake when it combined a vote on disciplinary procedures with a Tory MP's suspension. Former Cabinet Minister Owen Paterson has now officially resigned. He faced a 30-day ban for breaching lobbying rules, but a Conservative vote blocked the recommendation before making a U-turn. Yorkshire County Cricket Club has announced the appointment of Lord Patel as its new chairman and director. It follows the resignation of Roger Hutton, who quit in the wake of Azim Rafiq's racism allegations against the club. 2 other board members have also resigned. A 5th teenager has been found guilty of killing 15-year-old Keon Lincoln, who was shot and stabbed outside his home in Birmingham in January. Kieran Donaldson has been convicted, having been accused of supplying weapons for the attack. Downing Street says progress with the Northern Ireland Protocol negotiations have been limited. Brexit Minister Lord Frost and EU Commission Vice President Maros Sefcovic met in Brussels to try and reach an agreement over the issue. The two will meet again in London next week. A record-breaking 853 migrants crossed the English Channel on Wednesday. The Home Office confirmed the number, which tops the previous daily record of 828 set in August. Earlier, French authorities said 2 migrants died this week while attempting the journey. More than 21,000 migrants have now made the crossing to the UK this year, double the total for 2020. Thousands of young activists are marching through Glasgow demanding action on climate change. The protest, organised by the school strike movement Fridays for Future, is being staged during the COP26 conference. Environmental campaigner Greta Thunberg and other global youth activists are due to speak later. We'll have a full update for you at the top of the hour. See you then.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. Some tragic news from the channel today. Migrant attempting to reach the UK is feared dead. And it comes as one channel ferry reportedly stopped to rescue migrants on a sinking boat and then return them to Calais. And the number of illegal crossings this year hits 20,000. So joining me now to give us the very latest is our GB News Home and Security Editor, Mark White. So Mark, this story, instead of going down during the winter time, these people keep coming during what is very, very rough terrain.
Yeah, this has been an absolutely chaotic week. A combination of record numbers of migrants trying to make the crossing, but trying to make the crossing in winter now. Yeah. Even though to them it appears a bit calmer out there, it's never calm in the Channel. No. And especially in the winter. On Wednesday, we were reporting that a very significant number, at least 800, had crossed the Channel. Now that has been confirmed belatedly by the Home Office 2 days later, that number is 853 that crossed on Wednesday. That is a record for a single day in crossing. More than 25 small boats that were intercepted. The lifeboat from Ramsgate, from Dungeness, from Dover, they were out all day long, back-to-back calls they were dealing with, as well as the border force themselves dealing with all these multiple calls. While that was happening, Arlene, on the other side of the Channel, in French waters, lots of these boats that had set off were getting into difficulties and overturning, and there were rescues underway. 779 people, in addition to the 853 that were intercepted on this side of the Channel, got into difficulties and had to be rescued by the French. Tragically, we know that at least 2 people have drowned in incidents on Wednesday. Another yesterday was found dead on a beach near a waterlogged boat just about 5 miles or so from Calais. Another 2 people found next to that person suffering from severe hypothermia. Where were the rest of the people in this boat? We don't know. Yeah. And the trouble is, if they get washed out to sea, none of them have documentation.
because that's one thing the people traffickers tell them to do.
Yeah.
Throw away your passports and other identifying documents. And of course, the currents take them and they wash up on a beach far away whenever they do. And we'll never know how many people are actually drowning out there in terrible conditions.
And there's so many complex parts to this story, isn't there? There's the human tragedy, of course, but there's also the criminal element, and you've made reference to that. People traffickers telling them to throw away their passports. These are the people that are responsible for these deaths, of course.
The criminal element now is enormous, and they are making millions and millions of this trade in human cargo. They are, as I say, just on that one day alone, on Wednesday, 22 boats were told intercepted by the French, more than 25 intercepted by the UK. So almost 50 boats sent out full of people, and they're charging about €5,000 a head at least for people that are getting onto these boats. It's very lucrative for them. The British and the French government say that they are they're trying to deal with the people traffickers, they're getting intelligence on them, they are making arrests all of the time. But it's such a lucrative and well-organised criminal network by organised criminal gangs that the minute one gang is taken out of the picture, another gang goes in and fills that void. And all of the time, there are people coming, and many of them, of course, in northwestern France, are trying to get to the UK. There was an incident just last night, another tragedy. Some 50 Eritreans walking on the rail line between Calais and Dunkirk, hit by a train. One of them died, 3 of them have been seriously injured. It gives you an indication of what it's like out there.
Yeah.
One of the French politicians in that area around Calais says there are now an incalculable number of migrants who've been making it to that area, trying to get across, being lured by messages they're getting back further down the chain from these criminal gangs who say, look, we can do it for you. It's happening. It's easy. We're getting many hundreds across every day, and there's nothing that the authorities can really do.
Well, I have to say it's shocking stuff, Mark, and no doubt we'll come back to it again in the very near future. But thank you for joining us this afternoon to update us. And now to America. The Democrats have lost the state of Virginia, near to where Joe Biden was born, to a Trump-backed candidate. What was the reason? The pandemic, taxes, immigration, or Joe Biden's chaotic handling of the Afghanistan withdrawal? Or perhaps something else? Critical race theory, for example, and the woke politics being taught to children in school. Glenn Youngkin, the Republican who won the state, put that issue front and centre of his campaign. So could the election be the beginning of a sustained slide in popularity for Joe Biden? And are the Democrats in trouble? Joining me now is Professor Eric Kaufmann, a professor of politics at Birkbeck University of London. Professor, thank you very much for joining me. You will have heard me run through a number of issues there in relation to why this happened. Why do you think it happened in Virginia?
Thanks, Arlene. Yeah, I think the issue of education and critical race theory is absolutely critical here. Now, of course, Biden's popularity nationally has gone down, and all of those things you mentioned, Afghanistan and the economy, contribute to that. But what's really interesting in this race was how much the issue of critical race theory in education was played up by Glenn Youngkin in advertisements, for example. He caught his opponent, Terry McAuliffe, saying that parents really had no business telling teachers what to teach in the classroom. There have been attempts to investigate parents who appear at school board meetings trying to sort of get these policies, these sort of neo-racist policies overturned. So that issue and the emergence, really, if you like, of woke politics as an election issue is what is so significant, I think, about this particular moment. And I do think this is a major political moment which will define a new era of cultural politics, culture wars politics, not just in the US, but increasingly in other Western countries, including Britain.
And perhaps you could explain for our viewers who maybe aren't familiar with where Virginia is, both geographically and politically, why this is a significant moment, as you see it, in American politics and indeed Western politics as well.
Right. So this is sort of a state on the east coast of the U.S. that is reliably Democratic, where Joe Biden won by 10 points in 2020, and the governor, the Democrat governor, lost by 2.5 points. So this is a major upset. In addition, 2 other offices that hadn't been held by the Republicans were won by them for the first time in 12 years. All over the U.S., we've seen other elections in New York City, in Seattle, the first Republican elected since 1975. We've seen a lot of places where the overreach by the cultural left has led to quite a bloody nose in a series of races, and also raised, I guess, the salience, the importance of this issue of wokeness and the issue of critical race theory.
And can I say, you've mentioned that influence in the Democrats and the apparent move to the left for the Democrats. I mean, what sort of an impact is that going to have on the midterms next year? And do you think that Kamala Harris is having an increasing impact and influence on the presidency?
I don't think so much Harris, but I think the unpopularity of some of these cultural left issues, defunding the police, not enforcing the border, teaching children that if they're white, that they're privileged, and that America is a systemically racist society built on stolen land. These sorts of themes, I think, are really damaging the Democratic brand, and you can hear that from Democratic strategist James Carville was lamenting the seeping in of woke politics into the Democratic Party, making them increasingly unelectable. And all of the signs are that they're going to take quite a drubbing in the 2022 midterms if they don't somehow manage to put some distance between themselves and these radical ideas which come from university campuses.
And maybe this is an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, Eric. I mean, do you think that this sort of reaction to woke politics and critical race theory that is happening, and we're seeing it in America, is going to translate into politics here in the UK?
I do think it has the potential to do so, yes. I mean, every week there are new initiatives being pushed in universities, in the NHS, in the police, and so on, that are making the news. And it's very much up to, I guess, the Conservative Party here to really start to lead a bit more with these issues in their campaign messaging. I mean, this is what the Republicans under Youngkin have done in the US and are increasingly doing. It's an issue that unites the conservative voting base, and it divides the left-wing voting base. So it is a very, very strong issue for the right to campaign on. I'd say the conservatives here have been more reluctant to do that, but I think as we've seen in the US, this is very much a vote winner. So I would expect it to emerge here, perhaps not as brashly and not in the same way, but I would expect it to be an increasing issue because this issue is simply being pushed so strongly in our institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's fascinating to get your take on what's going on in the US. And now to Northern Ireland. We've seen clashes at community interfaces in Belfast this week. For those not from Northern Ireland, these are sort of areas between nationalist and unionist communities. And later we'll discuss if the European Union imposed Northern Ireland Protocol is to blame. But first, let's get the latest from our reporter in Northern Ireland, Dougie. Are you there?
I am indeed, and it has been a week of unsettled violence. It has been low level in some sort of way. Just about 5 miles up the road from where I'm standing now in Newton Ards, the Booton Estate, 2 masked men boarded a bus, set at a light, and it was in protest at the Northern Ireland Protocol. In the last 48 hours, we had pretty much sustained rioting in an interface area in Lanark Way. That's the road that runs between the Loyalist Shankhill Road and the Nationalist Springfield Road. Now, the problem with this is that these bits of violence go from nothing to bang within seconds. There was a rally there against the protocol. The unionists were holding it, and within minutes there was petrol bombs, burning bins, and then the nationalists then decided to attack the police from the other side of Lanark Way. In fact, there was 2 children arrested. We do believe that they were from the nationalist side of the community and not even from the Springfield Road area. That brings a whole lot of other things into question. But these unionist communities now are working class communities. They feel under threat. They're a bit like a lot of the communities in the north of England. They believe that they're culture is being undermined, that they're being made to apologise for things that were nothing to do with them, and that other people's culture goes over the top of them. Throw into that mix the Northern Ireland Protocol, where all of a sudden their political capital, their worth of a vote, isn't even, it's not credible anymore, because they are taking their rules from Brussels, somewhere where they have no MEPs. Just here at Stormont, they weren't even allowed to put a commemoration stone to celebrate the centenary of Northern Ireland. Nationalists stopped that. They also stopped up the lighting up of the City Hall. And Leo Varadkar went to Brussels showing pictures of IRA violence. The SDLP said any one camera, even a CCTV camera on the border, would, it would bring on violence in the nationalist communities. So these people in these unionist loyalist communities don't believe they have any political capital. They don't believe they have anything to lose. So therefore they're believing that violence pays. And the political masters here, we will watch this weekend with great worry and see exactly what's going on.
Thanks, Dougie. It is a worrying time, and there's a lot of alienation and disaffection in some of those communities. But now a new poll in Northern Ireland has shown overwhelming support for the Union, with just 1/3 of respondents expressing support to leave the United Kingdom. It demonstrates that for a strong majority of people, the Union is important, and therefore the protocol that divides Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK is a potential problem to them. Before we talk to our guest about polling, just before the show, the European Commission Vice President, Maroš Šefčovič, has warned that there will be serious consequences if the UK triggers Article 16. So let's catch up with that.
We have seen no move at all from the UK side. I find this disappointing, and once again, I urge the UK government to engage with us sincerely. Our aim should be to establish stability and predictability for Northern Ireland. We hear a lot about Article 16 at the moment. Let there be no doubt that triggering Article 16 to seek the renegotiation of the protocol would have serious consequences.
So that's from a press conference that just took place a couple of minutes ago. And joining me now is Gordon Lyons, the Northern Ireland Economy Minister, and Professor Jonathan Tong from the Department of Politics at the University of Liverpool. You're both very welcome. Gordon Lyons, what did you make of the most recent polling that just came out overnight in relation to, first of all, support for the Union, but secondly, the fact that the protocol is only number 4 in a list of important issues for people?
Well, of course, the poll is hugely encouraging, but not surprising. I think any of us that live and understand Northern Ireland know that most people here want to remain as a part of the United Kingdom. And we have to remind ourselves sometimes that Twitter isn't representative of the UK or of Northern Ireland. And it's quite clear to us that there remains that really strong support for being part of the United Kingdom. However, it does also show that Sinn Féin are in the lead for the next Assembly election. And so the very clear message that comes out of this poll is if you care about the Union, if you want to see the Union survive, then you have to get behind and vote for the DUP, because that's your best defence against Sinn Féin taking control of power here in Northern Ireland. In terms of the protocol, we recognise that it isn't right now in that poll the number one concern for many people. But of course, we're not just concerned about right now, we're concerned about the future. And my big concern is that when there's that increasing divergence between Great Britain and Northern Ireland in terms of regulation, and we remain under the control of the European Union, that's when it will become a critical issue. And we have a number of problems now. Those are only going to grow and become greater. And that's why we need solutions to the problem right now.
So we're very short of time, unfortunately, and I do want to get the views of Jonathan Tong. Tell me, John, in terms of this polling exercise, were you surprised in relation to the figures of the under 35 for the support for the Union? Was that something that surprised you?
No, the consistent message from the polls that we've conducted is that support for a united Ireland is some way short of anything that would trigger a border poll. It was around 30% support for a united Ireland in this poll. still a comfortable majority for Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom. Some other online polls have had those figures quite a bit closer, but it's never been the message that we found. What we also found, of course, was that the protocol was not in the top 3 issues, but people, perhaps contradictorily, wanted free movement of goods going between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The question begged is, how do you actually square that circle? At the moment, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, as leader of the DUP, is putting pressure on to get rid of the sea border rather than the protocol itself, to some respects. Now, if the EU will buy that, then we could potentially have a solution to the vexed issue of the protocol. But in terms of the union, which is a separate issue, really we're still some distance from a united Ireland on the available polling evidence that we've conducted, at least.
Just when you mention free movement of goods, I noticed that in the poll, the support for the UK government's proposal in relation to the circulation of goods within Northern Ireland and into Northern Ireland that met UK or EU standards was backed by 75% of those polls. That's quite a significant piece, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they don't want any friction on goods going between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Again, that confirms what we found when we did asked a similar question at the last election. But people also support the EU mitigations that have been in place thus far. The question is, how far can the EU be budged now in terms of further mitigations, in terms of checks on goods going between Great Britain and Northern Ireland? But people don't necessarily see it in terms of sovereignty. They see it in terms of they don't want practical barriers to trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, given that they obviously, mutually, that they're part of the same internal market.
Yeah, so I'm sorry that we've ran out of time on this, because obviously I would have liked much, much longer to speak about this polling and indeed the support for the union. But thank you both for joining me this afternoon. And you've been watching The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster. The show is back every weekday from 12 p.m. I'll leave you now with the news and the weather.
Hello again. A lot more cloud across the UK today compared to yesterday, but actually many places still dry and bright. It is a little milder compared to recent days. It will turn even milder again this weekend, but also windier as this low approaches. Ahead of the low, this warm front bringing additional cloud cover across the UK. But generally, well, most places are dry and bright. And as we end the day, decent